Welcome again to the Old Principle. Today we're going to look at another interesting lesson. This one is number 164. Stop the fire. Well, when we say stop the fire, whoa, that looks hot, doesn't it? That is hot. That's flames of fire. Now, we're going to look at that in just a minute. But before we begin, we've got to ask Mrs. Ash to read the story. So stay by for the story. I'll be right back.
Story 164, Stop the Fire. During the frontier days of 19th century America, fires on the prairie were greatly feared. The enormous plains in the center of the continent were covered with grass, weeds, and brush. This brush was precisely the fuel that a big fire needed to keep it burning. Any kind of hot spark or flame could set it off. It might be from a small fire lit by a farmer to burn his trash, grass, or useless wood. Or it might be started by lightning during a thunderstorm. But once it got underway, it could sweep across miles of prairie before burning itself out on a riverbank. One great prairie fire, driven by a strong wind, advanced with great speed toward a farmer's homestead. Smoke billowed skyward for thousands of feet and could be seen for many miles. The farmer quickly hitched his horses to a plow, signaled to the animals, and made several furrows. He plowed the form of a large circle around his home, including his barns and the tool shed. Then he set fire to the dry grass within the circle. He had to be careful that his little fire didn't burn his buildings down. He watched it carefully until it had burned all the circle clean. He glanced up and saw that the roaring, terrifying demon of the prairie was bearing down upon him. He watched, trembling, hoping his efforts would stay the devastation that could be his if his plans didn't work. He urged his family into the underground shelter where they kept potatoes and other vegetables cool. Giant tongues of leaping flames charged down upon his place. But when they struck the furrows in the ground that he had already burned, they swirled around the circle, and the fire went on its devastating way. The farmer and his family, his house and his barns, his machinery and his animals were all saved.
Okay, now we come to stop the fire. During the frontier days. Frontier days means the early days. Frontier is undeveloped, 还没有完全发展好啊。So frontier days. 那这个是很久以前。It says 19th century, 第19世纪。在美国的 So that's the 1800s. 19th century is the 1800s. So this is a long, long time ago. Frontier days, of course, very bad roads, almost no roads, just trails, no telephones, of course, no computers, of course. We're talking about a long time ago. But today we're talking about fires, 这个火 fires, okay? On the prairie. Okay, what is a prairie? A prairie is a 很大的这个草原. Okay, now we will be looking at 平原 plains and prairie 大的草原. Sometimes they are used interchangeably. 这个是同一个意思呢。So when you see prairie or plains, almost the same thing. In fact, it says fires on the prairie were greatly feared. 非常非常可怕，大家都很 how do you say, they were afraid of these fires. Some people call them wildfires. They are out of control. 无法控制, out of control. Going on. The enormous plains, now we come to plains, 大的平原, 大平原. Enormous, what does enormous mean? It means big, great, large, huge, enormous. These are all 形容词, okay, to say the enormous plains in the center of the continent. Okay, 北美洲, 北美洲. It doesn't say North American continent, but that's the continent. 这个洲, okay, continent. Okay, in the center of the plains. Okay, the enormous plains in the center of the continent were covered with, okay, so what do you have? You have grass, and you have weeds, and you have, well, brush. What is brush? I know what grass is, 草. Weeds is 野草. But what is brush? Brush is little trees. Little trees. They're not grass, and they're not real trees, but they're just short. It's brush. And usually it's no value, 没有什么价值, okay? But it does burn, okay? And these were covered with, these plains, these enormous plains were covered with grass and weeds and brush. Going on. It was precisely the fuel. 这个就是恰恰所需要的燃料. In other words, the grass and the weeds and the brush, they burned. Precisely, 刚好就是所需要的 for a big fire that was needed for a very big fire to keep it burning. Of course, a fire like this burns very fast and then stops. So it needs wind to blow it, so it keeps advancing, 是往前进的, and it keeps burning more and more. Okay, going on. Any kind of hot spark or flame could set it off. 任何一个 hot spark, 热热的 spark. What is a spark? A spark is, how do you say, 火花? A spark. 叫 a spark. 火花. Or flame, or 火焰. Okay, could set it off. 会点燃的. To set it off means to 点燃. So it would start the fire going on. It might be from a small fire. Of course, out there in the plains, people have a small fire This fire would be for for cooking or something like that. So a small fire, okay, or in this case, lit by the farmer to burn his trash, grass, or useless wood. And of course, around the farm, you have usable land. Let's say that you want to use the land. So this land around here, you have to get rid of. 你要除掉所有的杂草啊，这个野草啊。Because it's no good. You have to prepare to plant something valuable, okay? Okay, so he's going to burn a small fire, okay? A small fire. To burn it, 他要烧掉 the trash, 垃圾, okay? 垃圾, okay? Or grass, 草. Or useless wood, 没有用的这个木材. So the farmer starts the fire going on. Or it might be started by lightning during a thunderstorm. Okay, now sometimes fire is started by lightning 是闪电 ，OK， 闪电起火的 ，OK， or during a thunderstorm 雷暴 ，OK， 雷暴 thunderstorm because thunderstorms we say thunderstorms, the thunderstorms have lightning. And see, this is the lightning in a thunderstorm. And of course, when lightning happens, the lightning hits the ground or hits a tree. The tree or the ground is started on fire, and it keeps on burning. Going on. But once it got underway, that means once the fire got started, now the farmer lit the fire. 这个农人农家是点了火 because he wanted to use the fire to do something good. It could sweep across miles of the prairie if the wind is blowing. Okay? And it blows the fire. So some days, even now in my home, on days when we burn the grass, we have to have no wind. No wind. It's very important not to have wind. Or if you do have wind, make sure 它的方向是对的. The wind is blowing the right direction. Okay, and once it got underway, 已经点火了, the fire started, it could sweep across miles of prairie. What does it mean to sweep across miles of prairie? To sweep across means that it's going to move across. Sweep, of course, is 这个扫地。平常我们用 to sweep the floor, but it also means to move across, almost like sweeping the prairie. And this fire moves across. Okay, it sweeps across miles, many miles of prairie before burning itself out on the river bank. Now, what does it mean to burn out on a river bank? Of course, when the fire comes to the river, it stops, right? So riverbank 就是这个河边啊。The fire comes there to the 河边, to the riverbank, and then it stops. If the fire stops, it burns out. 就烧尽了. In other words, it stops burning. There's nothing more to burn. Go ahead. One great prairie fire, driven by a strong wind, advanced with great speed toward a farmer's homestead. Okay, now we're talking about a specific story. One great prairie fire. So this is a big prairie fire. It started and it could not be stopped. There's no way to stop a prairie fire. 这个大草原的这种火, it just doesn't stop. It's driven by a strong wind. Okay, 被这个大风啊吹了. Okay, and it advanced with great speed. Advanced 就亲近了, 这个走近了. Okay, with great speed, 很快走到 what? A farmer's homestead. Okay, what is a farmer's homestead? Okay, a farmer's homestead is 他的家, 他的田产. Okay, homestead meaning more than just a house. It means the land that he has lived on. Many years ago, if you went somewhere, you could live on the land, and as you lived on the land for a certain amount of time, the land became yours. 不用付钱. So this is a homestead. It's your home and your land. Go ahead. Smoke billowed up. Smoke. What is smoke? 烟, okay? And smoke billowed up. 浓烟滚滚的上去. I hope that's right. But anyway, it's going up. Billowed is 滚滚的就上去. Skyward, toward the sky. Upward. Okay? For thousands of feet. Whoa. Now this is a big fire because you can see the smoke for many thousands of feet up there, okay? And it could be seen for many miles. Whoa. Now, what's the farmer going to do? Go ahead. The farmer quickly hitched up the horses to a plow. Farmer quickly hitched his horses, 就把他的马就套上一个犁. Okay, a plow, 犁田的犁. Okay, so he hitched up his horses to a plow and signaled, in this case, signals, 把一个记号就说出来. In those days, they were able to, I still remember some farmers, they would say, he, ha, and the horse would know he means to go this way and ha means to go that way. Very, very interesting. So he signaled to the animals and they made several furrows. What is a furrow? A furrow is a goal, okay? 这个犁的一个沟, okay? And so several furrows. Now, why would he do that? Going on. He plowed the form of a large circle around his home. So 他犁过 what? The form of a large circle. 一个很大的圆圈呢，在围绕着 okay? 围绕着 around his home, including 包括 barns 这个谷仓 and 他的工具房啊. So what is he doing? He is putting a circle around his home. But that's not all. Let's continue. Then he set fire to the dry grass within the circle. Okay, when the wind is blowing very hard and the fire is advancing very fast, even if you plowed a circle like this, and it's maybe this wide, the fire will jump over. So he plowed around the circle, okay? He set fire to the dry grass within the circle. So here you have it. The fire is out there. You have the circle around the house and the barn and so on. And then he sets fire to the grass inside the circle. Why? Because he first wants to burn it all up. He wants to burn it up. Going on. Okay, he had to be careful that his little fire didn't burn the buildings down, of course. 不要烧到你自己的房子，你自己的谷仓. But he had to do that. Okay, going on. He watched it carefully until it had burned everything inside the circle. So all the grass is burned up inside of the circle. Going on. He glanced up and he saw the roaring, terrifying demon of the prairie was coming down on him. He glanced up. He looked up and he saw the roaring, terrifying, 这个很大的声音呢。哇 terrifying 是可怕的 demon of the prairie. The demon 就是大草原的这个鬼呀，鬼 is what they call the prairie fire. So this is the demon of the prairie was bearing down on him. It was getting closer and closer and closer to him. Going on. He watched, trembling, hoping his efforts would stay the devastation. He watched. He was trembling, 他发抖 hoping his efforts, 希望他的努力会. Now this is very interesting. What does it mean to stay? Stay means to stop. So if you say stay the devastation, okay, the destruction, 这个毁灭, the destroying part, to stop the devastation, that could be his if his plans didn't work. 如果他的计划不成功的话，这个肯定，这个会毁灭，会烧掉他一切所做的了，他的家、谷仓等等。Going on, he urged his family into the underground shelter where they kept potatoes and other vegetables cool. He urged. In this case, urged means 赶快, quickly. And his family to the underground shelter. What's an underground shelter? Sometimes we call them potato cellar. Why? Because they kept their potatoes in there. It's 这个地下的. Of course, it's safe down there. It won't burn in the underground. 你在地下, okay? And he kept potatoes and other vegetables cool. Sometimes my grandfather had a apple cellar, and it was cool, and he kept his apples in there. Going on. Giant tongues of leaping flames. Okay, there's a 火焰. Okay, like 大的舌头. Okay, and these flames were leaping up leaping up, 好像舌头, and these flames of fire were leaping up toward the sky. And it was charging, it was moving, it was coming to his place, to his home. Going on. But when they struck the furrows and the ground that had already been burned, when they struck, 他们碰到他所犁的田，他所犁的沟 ，OK， and the ground 已经被烧的这个里面的这个那块草 ，and so when the big fire came up there, what's happening? They swirled around the circle, and the fire went on its devastating way. Okay, the fire swirled around, 绕过. Swirl gives the idea like this, 旋转, okay? And so it swirled around. So it went around the circle because, and the fire 继续跑，它会害人，害这个伤害 devastating 伤害的意思。Okay, way. The farmer and his family and his house and barns and machinery and animals were saved. Whew. 幸亏一切都好. Okay, so that's the end of our story. And my heart is being bung bung tiao, but you need to write to theoldprinciple@gmail.com. 或者你可以看我们的网站 www.theoldprinciple.org. Hey, it's been great to spend a little time with you. I wish I could tell you more. So, in fact, I will tell you more stories. Join me next time, won't you?